So you're thinking about moving to the Houston Metro and you want to know if it's everything that they say it is and more. Well, you're in luck because today in this video, I'm going to give you my top 15 reasons that may make you reconsider your choice. And we're going to get after it right now. Let's go. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Royce Isaac, the luxury boss with the Royce Luxury Living Team right here in the Houston Metro. Today in this video, I'm going to share with you my top 15 reasons that may make you want to reconsider on whether or not Houston's the best fit for you. But before I do that, if this is your first time visiting and you want to know what it's like to work, play, eat, sleep, or live right here in the Houston Metro, then get started right now by subscribing to this channel. So click on that subscribe button and tap on that little bell, and you'll get notified every time we upload a new video. So Houston is a wonderful, beautiful city to live in, and I just absolutely love living here. However, it still has its challenges just like any place else. So I'm going to give you that rundown of my top 15 reasons, again, why you may want to reconsider your choice and relocating to the Houston area. So without further ado, number 15. So air quality. Houston has the highest tree pollen count in the country. And that just basically translates into, even if you don't have allergies, you're probably going to still be congested or have a runny nose at some point while living here. And next to that is the smog. Most days are fairly fine. At least I'm used to it, I guess, because I've been here my entire life. But we do have a plethora of refineries and plants on the east side of town, like near the Trinity Bay area. It's just inundated with plants all up and down 225 highway. You'll see the smog, which definitely adds to Houston being ranked number 9 out of the top 10 cities for the worst city in ozone pollution. So definitely not the best place to live if you have a bunch of sinuses. I know my best friend, she struggles with this, but she's been here for most of her life, and she actually relocated from New York, so I guess it's a little bit better here. Number 14, natural disasters. Now, contrary to the popular belief, Houston always has hurricanes or some type of tropical storm. Let me clarify that. We always have, during hurricane season, we always have tropical storms or hurricane threats. Not necessarily do they actually come into Houston or land. We usually just get a bunch of wind when that actually happens, or we get a lot of people migrating to Houston, such as from New Orleans or parts of Louisiana, because they actually get more of the landfall of the actual hurricanes and tropical storms than Houston does. I've been here my entire life for 40 years, and I could probably count on one hand the number of times a hurricane actually hit Houston. And so I've lived here, again, in all 4 corners of the city, and so it's the same no matter what. Now, what we do get is flooding. It doesn't flood all over the city. I know what you may see on the news reports. Last, 2017, when Harvey hit, my cousin from Dallas, she calls and reaches out to me wondering if I'm okay. I was out on my back patio barbecuing. That's because I lived in what we call a master plan community. Now, I understand a lot of you in different parts of the country, you don't know what a master plan community is because they may not have it in your area. No problem. That's why you have me and my team. But a master plan community is basically where a developer buys, acres of land, and they develop that land where you're going to have a residential area designed. And usually in those master plan communities, they're going to be designed where they're not going to flood, where they're designed not to flood. So you'll see in a lot of my other videos where I'm showing these man-made lakes and ponds within the neighborhoods. Well, for aesthetics, they look beautiful, right? You can maybe even go for recreational purposes, fishing, kayaking, boating, what have you. But they're actually architecturally designed as retention ponds so that you're not going to flood, the neighborhood's not going to flood. At worst, they're designed, those master plan communities are designed where you may have street flooding on some of the streets in your neighborhood, but your houses never flood. They're built up high on hills and things of that nature. So they're designed not to flood. I lived in one, never had a problem. Like I said, I was outside barbecuing during Harvey. The worst we had was my street was flooded up to a little above my ankle. That was about it. So yeah, I couldn't drive my car unless I had a jacked up pickup truck. but I didn't have to worry about, a hurricane coming to swipe my house away from me, or losing everything in a flood. There are areas that are perennial flooders in Houston, so I'm not going to lie to you. Like the 288 highway, it goes down and deep, so it's always going to flood if we have 6-7 inches of rainpour, constant rainpour, or the Meyerland area, which is a very affluent, historically Jewish community. We call it like the Jewish River Oaks here in Houston, and it has flooded 3 years in a row. We had 2015, 16, and 17. So we had the Memorial Day flood there in 2015, the Tax Day flood in 2016, and then Harvey, of course, in 2017. But each and every year, that community has rebounded in terms of property value because it's inside of 610 Loop. We have beautiful homes there, architectural homes, a lot of older homes with a lot of character. And now what a lot of people have done is they've invested about $40,000 to $50,000 into elevating the foundation of those homes to prevent future flooding of their homes going forward. So guys, please stop listening to these other videos and these other reports from outsiders who either never lived here or maybe have lived here for a short stint, and they're just trying to get a bunch of followers and likes and comments on their videos that are saying that during the summer it's flooding every week or that it's flooding everywhere in Houston. That is absolutely not true. I've never had any flood, thank God, in any house that I've ever lived in. And I can say the same for the majority of the people that I know, and I know thousands. So no flooding here, don't worry. It does flood, but not everywhere, and it's not as bad as you think. But if you hire a great real estate agent like myself and my team when you move here, shameless plug, we'll make sure that you get in a house and a neighborhood that is designed not to flood. Number 13, the heat. Houston's heat. You do not get used to it. I'm just going to be honest with you. There's nothing you can do. What you do get used to is trying to get used to the heat here in Houston. So I remember the first time I went to New York, we had a very hot summer here in Houston. It was a drought, and I flew to New York during the summer. It was June, and I remember getting off the airplane, and I was anticipating feeling sweat, a bead of sweat on my forehead, and I was so relieved when it was like 84 degrees there in New York that day. I was like, wait a minute, I don't feel the immediate bead of sweat the moment I walk out of an air-conditioned room or car, that it was just automatically going to populate on my forehead. I didn't have that problem because New York obviously doesn't have the humidity that you have in Texas. And the reason why we have all of that is because where Houston and the state of Texas is located is a perfect situation for all of the humidity coming off of the Gulf of Mexico, off that water, and is meeting that pressure, that high pressure. Sound like a news reporter, a weatherman at least, is meeting all of that high pressure coming from the north, right where Houston is, or at least the Houston metropolitan area. So therefore you have these two different pressure points: low pressure here, with high humidity, and high pressure from the north, and they meet right where Houston is, and therefore you have high temperatures with a lot of humidity. Now, I'm no weatherman, but I'm pretty sure that's at least a C+ in class. So with all of that being said, I have friends I'm African American, but I have African friends who say, damn man, this heat reminds me of Africa, like it's worse than Africa. And it is, man. I've never been, probably gonna go one day, but it's wet heat. It's not dry heat like in California. It is wet heat, which I think is the worst. So you're always having to come dressed, prepared. When you walk out of your house, you want to make sure you're hydrated when you walk out during the summer months here. And we really don't have any winter months. You have about 3 or 4 weeks of cold weather, maybe 5 at best, on a good year of cold weather. And when I say cold, that's relative, because in Houston, we don't really know what cold is. I get it. But for us, anything below 50 degrees for the most part starts to feel like cold weather here in Houston. But it does get really, really cold at times. We'll have, below freezing weather here. So the weather here in Houston sometimes can be very sporadic. It'll start off sunny, then it's raining, then it's hot and muggy. And we actually get snow here from time to time, believe it or not. So The weather and the heat here is just something you have to prepare for. So number 12, high taxes. So Houston and of course state of Texas gets a lot of fame for not having any state income tax. So you do, on the other hand, have sales tax here in Houston. Our sales tax rate is 8.25%. And for all effective purposes, our property taxes in Houston is around 2.530. And so you don't necessarily have to worry about paying any state income tax in the state of Texas, which is obviously a great thing. You just go to work and you pay your federal taxes. But you do have the 8.25% sales tax. It's not the highest, but it is on the high end compared to what I researched with the rest of the country. But the good thing about it is you don't have to buy what you don't want to buy. You don't have to buy that leather bag. You don't have to buy that leather purse. You don't have to buy that car. You don't have to buy the boat, that yacht, whatever it is. You have a choice. And the median home value here is only $185,000. So it still is a very affordable place to live compared to most of the country, especially when you're considering California or New York or parts of Florida. No zoning laws. So what that means is Houston has it where there are no zoning laws to determine what type of structures are going to be built in any particular neighborhood, unless it's a master plan community. Again, another conversation for another day. But let me really expound upon what that looks like, because I'm sure you've heard and you've seen some videos where, again, people are really exaggerating what that could and does look like in Houston. It's not as if you're living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and right next door to you is a skyscraper. What it usually looks like is you have your 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and next to you may be a 3 or 4-story townhouse that's worth $500,000. So that's the difference. Your house here is this little 1-story single family residence that's worth about $200,000, and then right next door to you is a 4-story with a rooftop terrace townhouse that's worth $500,000. So it doesn't look the same, because in most parts of the country, especially in other major metropolitan areas where they have zoning laws, you're going to see basically cookie cutter neighborhoods. So I actually, for one, kind of like the fact that Houston doesn't have any zoning laws for residential use, because it can give your neighborhood a lot of culture. The downside of it, though, is right outside of your neighborhood may be a strip club. Right outside of your neighborhood could be a chemical plant right outside of your neighborhood. So again, you get with the right real estate agent that really takes to heart your needs, you won't be led astray into moving in a neighborhood where none of that has been researched for you. So number 10, you get paid less. And what I mean by that is, oftentimes when clients of mine relocate to the Houston metro area, they keep the same employer. Sometimes their household income gets reduced, and that's because the cost of living here in Houston is lower than the national average, 5% to be exact. And the median annual household income is about 15% lower of that than the national average. But again, keep in mind, you don't have that state income tax to worry about, so you actually take more of your paycheck home every month. Now, there is another nasty stat out there for Houston, and that is Houston's poverty line is 45% higher of that of the national average, and unfortunately, about a quarter of its population lives below the poverty line here in Houston. So number 9, transportation. To put it mildly, it sucks. And that's because Houston is so big. Just like they say in Texas, we do everything big in Texas, and Houston's no different. It's 637 square miles across. So you absolutely have to have a car here. The public transportation is not good at all. I mean, we do have Uber and Lyft if you're willing to pay to travel. If you don't drive, the metro bus doesn't go everywhere, and the metro rail is even smaller than that. So they are trying to improve it around being more bikeable, walkable, including, expanding the public transportation in Houston, but it's subpar at best. It's definitely big. The city, the Houston metropolitan area as a whole, is 9,444 miles. I mean, that's larger than the state of New Hampshire. You could put that entire state in the Houston metropolitan area and still have room to spare. So it's not a place that you're planning on walking. Now, they do have some walkable areas in the city of Houston proper, like downtown areas, the Greater Heights, the Houston Heights. You also have Edo, which is East Downtown. You have the Midtown area, Galleria area, just to name a few. So they do have some walkable areas. However, again, you definitely need a car unless you're going to live and work in those immediate areas. Which takes me to number 8, road construction. Road construction in Houston, again, is not the best experience at all. There seems to always be some type of construction going on some major highway or road, any and everywhere in Houston. Right now, the biggest issue, at least for me, is 59 South Freeway, specifically where it meets the 610 loop by the Galleria or Uptown area. And that's because they're expanding the bridges there. So because of all the influx of people and the density of the population in that area and that travels that area, they're having to expand the freeway and highway. And 59 South Freeway, or Route 69, is the official term for it, is actually the most traveled freeway in the entire country. So Houston has the most cars on the road than any other metropolitan area in the country as well. So the Texas roadways here are very dangerous. The city of Houston ranks number 1 in the state in total crashes, with over 64,000 reported to the Texas Department of Transportation in 2018. And according to Texas Department of Transportation, in their End the Street Texas campaign, it has been 19 years since there's been a deathless day on Texas roadways. So needless to say, with all the cars and fatalities on the road, your car insurance is more likely going to increase once you move to Houston. Gun control. Houston is a very liberal and progressive city. However, it is still located in the state of Texas. And Texas is definitely supportive of the Second Amendment. What that basically means is we're an open carry environment. So you can pretty much carry openly any gun of your choosing, such as shotguns or even military grade weapons, as long as you comply with the concealed carry laws. However, to have a handgun on your person, you will be required to have a license for that. I don't necessarily say that this is a good or bad thing, but I definitely believe it's something you should be aware of when determining whether or not Houston and the state of Texas is a place for you and your family to move to. Crime. Houston's crime rate is so bad that when I researched this, I was surprised. And I've been here my entire life, and I actually grew up in South Park, the hood, where it was the mecca for Houston during the crack epidemic. And I was still surprised when I saw these numbers. Houston's total crime rate is 98% above that of the national average. It ranks number 3 in major metropolitan areas for total murders, only behind Chicago and Baltimore, which to me says a lot. It's also the hub for human trafficking in the world, for mostly sexual exploitation and forced labor, or to put it another way, slavery. Now, in talking about human trafficking, it actually takes me to my next point, which you may want to reconsider moving to Houston, which is prostitution. Houston definitely has a red light district, and here's a map of the 5 most populated areas where most of the crime and arrests have been made for prostitution or human trafficking. It is important to keep in mind that most of these ladies that are participating in prostitution here in Houston are not doing it by choice. They're actually victims of human trafficking. Again, it is a huge concern and issue here. I will say though, our great mayor, Sylvester Turner, along with our city council members and our police chief and our entire men and women in blue, are really fighting to make strong headways to fighting the reputation as well as the problem, more importantly, of Houston being a hub of human trafficking and prostitution. This is something that has been going on for years, and it's definitely been taken seriously in most recent years. Now, number 3, bad neighborhoods. Houston has a plethora of bad neighborhoods to stay away from. If you're not from Houston, you don't know anyone there, you don't have any family there, then you definitely need a real estate agent who's very familiar, like myself and my team. We're all Houston natives, and most of us have lived in multiple areas of the city our entire lives. So you definitely want to know what areas to stay away from. So if you're not from the area, definitely want to stay away from my old neck of the woods, Southeast Houston, where South Park, Sunnyside, certain parts of 3rd Ward. You want to stay away from basically anything on the east side of Houston if you don't know where you're going. So that's going to go for 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, and on the northwest side, you want to stay away from Studewood, Acres Homes areas. So just make sure you get with someone who knows where they're going, where you're looking at, because you might see a beautiful home in one of these areas and you think, okay, this is safe to go to. Nope, you know, pretty much stay off of any street with letters M, L, and K in it. So Martin Luther King Boulevard probably shouldn't be over there for you if you're not from the area. Oh, and I almost forgot, Southwest SWAT. SWAT doesn't just stand for the SWAT team. And matter of fact, if you live in a neighborhood where the SWAT team has to come to your house or to a house in your neighborhood, you probably should move. But SWAT in Houston also stands for Southwest Alief, Texas. That is Southwest Alief, Texas. I have some good friends from Southwest, or the SWAT as they call it, but it's not an area you probably want to bring your family to if you're just relocating to the Houston area. Number 2, unemployment rate. Houston's unemployment rate currently in October of 2020 is 8%, which is pretty much flat even with the national average of 7.9%. This time last year in 2019, it was 3.6%. So obviously it's a little bit more than double due to COVID. But the highest peak of COVID for us was both in April and May, where we were at 14.4 and 14.1% respectively. Now, Houston has always, in my opinion, have been different in terms of its economy compared to the rest of the US. It's always booming. And so even right now, if you're driving on the road, there are a ton of cars on the road. Now the traffic is bad, but it's not as bad as it was pre-COVID. But because there are still a lot of people working remotely and virtually, but there's still a ton of people on the road. I mean, don't forget, Houston proper has 2.3 million, over 2.3 million residents, and the entire Houston metropolitan has about 7.7 million residents here. So there are still a ton of people on the roads and still working. So it is a vibrant community. There are a lot of companies that are actually still hiring right now as we're trying to make it, you know, come out of COVID a little bit, or kind of get to somewhat a new norm, if you will. But I don't want you to think that there aren't any opportunities here, despite the unemployment rate being 8%, because Houston is a hub to over 400 Fortune 500 companies in the US. They actually have the most Fortune 500 companies has headquarters here in Houston than any other major metropolitan. That's above Dallas, that's above New York, that's above Atlanta, above LA. There's definitely a lot of opportunity here in energy and oil and medicine, research, as well as any industrial field as well. So Houston has a lot of employment hubs here that you can choose from, where you can make a great living for yourself as well, because don't forget, we don't have any state income tax. So your dollar goes a lot further here compared to most areas of it. Now, number 1, the most stressful reason personally for me living in Houston, at least right now, is not COVID, it's our sports teams. Yes, I am a Houston native. I am a homegrown kind of guy. I believe in going for the home team. So I'm a Houston Rockets, Houston Astros, Houston Dynamos, Houston Oilers even, everything, Houston Texans fan. And man, well, let me tell you right now, it's not just COVID, but 2020 has been hard. We lost Kobe and his daughter, and we've lost, you know, T'Challa from Wakanda, and now I lost D-Hop from the Texans, man, number 10, the best wide receiver in the game, and this Bill O'Brien trades this dude for nothing. I mean, I need a moment. Sorry guys, I had a moment there. But if you're interested in finding out more about some of the best areas to live in Houston or areas to avoid, then check out any of these 2 videos here. Or you can just simply reach out to us by giving us a call, shoot us a text, or send an email, however you want to reach us. But just remember, we got your back when it comes to relocating to the Houston Metro. And until the next video, take care, take charge, and I'll see you at the top. God bless.